Hi, Jose of Joy Fishkeeping. This past week has certainly been a week of many discussions about the same topic, basically. Stemming from a life of Patty Aquatics and Corey of Current Co-op. Some key questions were asked of Patty or Corey. And once there was some of the things are basically stemming from Dirted Tank. I had a follow-up video with Jorge of Mexicali Fishkeeper, and on the panel were also Sean from Discus North and Jay from Aquafunk. So my hope for the conversation was that it would be a discussion, a healthy discussion, a debate on some of the things that we do differently. It was never or has never been meant to be that a dirty aquarium is a bad thing or that you shouldn't do it. We all say, the hobby of fish keeping is whatever works for you. It was also not meant to be about water changes, whether how often you should do them, because it's different for every aquarium and it's different for every individual. Whatever you do works for you, it's fine. Now this life turned out to be quite a show for most people. So most people don't like drama. At some point I said, well, I'm stepping out of this one, but I thought it would be disrespectful to Jorge and the other people in the panel if I just kind of stayed out of it. But it was something to be seen. Tempers flared. Jason has a way of pushing people's button, and he did. But anyway, the bottom line was that I figured after this event that I said maybe it was a lapse in judgment from my end. Not so much to the thought of having this discussion, but of commenting some things, which a lot of the comments were not necessarily geared to me. I'm a person in the middle. I have no extremes in either way. Extreme for me would be that I'd like to do water changes every week because it works for me, and I do water changes about 80% most of the time because my fish are accustomed to it. They can handle it. I don't have fish death, as was suggested. Because of the large volume of change. The fish are very adaptable, whether it's in a dirty tank with little or no water change, or whether you do massive water changes. Again, fishes are adaptable. You have rainwater and you have plenty of water moving in there. The whole volume of the area just being exchanged in a relatively short time. They survive. They do well. They're adaptable. Now, the other thing was that on Dr. Fish, I keep saying Dr. Fish, I mean Father Fish, had a live the other day with where Jorge from Mexicali and Jay from Aquafunk stepped into the live. And Aquafunk asked him a question, which he did a members only video, and he said he was going to ask him. He knows Lou, that's Father Fish's first name, that he knows him well, and some of the things he said, where do we get this idea, people get this idea that there are no water changes happen with these Wostad method of fish keeping and with these quote-unquote natural aquariums. Anyway, so he asked him, Lou, let me ask you a question. That tank over there, for example, what do you have in it? He says, well, I have a canister filter, and I also have a sponge filter, and I have air which creates movement in the water. And he says, so where does this idea that you don't like to do, that you don't do water changes and no filtration? I said, where do people get that idea? And he kind of snickered and said, well, everybody that wants to grow on YouTube, and anybody that has a large number of followers, has a large channel, at some point or another has done thumbnails that were sensational. And basically they're clickbaits. And he said it, no water change. So for me personally, I have seen other people's video, not fish related. But I give you an example. It may have been not the person, but again, I don't wish, certainly not that for her. But let's say Hillary Clinton died. That was a clickbait. I mean, that was the thing. So I click on it, and she's not even mentioned in the video. So it forced me to go click. So if I see no water changes on a clickbait, I'm not going to look into the content of anybody. If it is something that I definitely doesn't apply to me or I don't agree with, because it is a topic that I'm not interested in or that I don't subscribe to. So then he goes further and saying that a lot of his, and then he says that other tank in particular, I have to do small water changes for about a week or 4 or 5 days to do maybe 10% until I can get the whole thing clear because it has so much tannins in it. So now one of the things that really has gotten to me to a point that I've actually considered not continuing doing YouTube. Maybe I'm naive. I have a small channel just that's barely a year old, and as I kid around that my wife forced me into doing YouTube. I've been I'm 62 now. I have been taking care of fish since I'm about 8 or so. So that's over 50 years. There's sometimes, like all of us, we take some time off because of our living arrangement or whatever it is, but I've been continuously taking care of fish for many, many years. Now, does that make me an expert? Hell no. Does not, I'm not an expert. I hate the word expert itself because there's a lot of people who claim to be expert, especially on YouTube. They know a lot and it's their way or the highway. So this conversation was never meant to be whether you should do water changes, how often you should do them. You do whatever works for you. If you feel that once a week, once a year, depending on your situation, that's what works for you. My tanks, I purposely keep them overstocked. I like to do that. I have a gravel substrate on some. I have sanded substrate at home, which I never have to do siphoning because the fish that are in there and the flow with the FX6 that I use, which I change them between 8 months to a year. That's when I service them. That works for me, and they keep the sand clean. So I vacuum the gravel substrate as needed, once a month, every 2 months, whenever I see that is needed to my standards. So now one of the things that I went into, people go into YouTube for many reasons. For me, I'm not lying, it was not for the money, not for the greatness. My wife says, you know a lot about fish keeping, why don't you share the knowledge? And that's the reason why I waited. Maybe I am naive, maybe I'm a purist, or maybe I have a natural desire to share information, to teach, and to help people. Maybe that's my nature, but maybe I'm just naive, like I said. He says, well, a lot of people have done the same thing as he did. He said, I was interested in growing my channel. I was interested in growing my business. So he sensationalized a little bit. So to me, one of the things that I covered in one of these other conversations that I'm having with you was that there's a lot of misinformation in YouTube. So if you are, everybody say, well, Father Fish is not about no water changes. He never says he does that, but he admitted in this live that he did and kind of, had a little fun at that moment when that was being done. Jorge Mexicali keeps a lot of dirty tank. It works for him. He can go away nicely for 2 weeks and not have to worry about the tank because if they're small breeds, it's kind of almost a self-sustained system. He does do aeration, I believe, and he does some water changes too. So this is not a pure Wallstat method according to the way it's supposed to be. So it's natural. Again, natural to me means a river, a lake where there is actually some sort of water movement, not stagnant, not a closed system. It's an open system. So which brings me back to the case. Did I do an error in judgment? Perhaps. I think I did. What was the error? Now, I never meant to try to convince somebody of how to do things, not to do this natural system, which is fine for me. I don't hate anybody for you. Do whatever works for you. But my judgment in error was to try to have a conversation, which is always healthy. You can have conversation without getting into fights, and hopefully something productive comes out of, as it did with Patty after the conversation with Corey. Just because Corey said it doesn't mean that, everybody wants to jump in this. I am sure this is not the first time in fish keeping or in YouTube that this discussion has been an issue. So there's been many conversations, many things on the topic, including Scotty from Raising Fishes, right? And also Patty did a follow-up on this conversation. And there's been other people who have made commentaries on this. But I like the fact that Funk did push a little bit Father Fish and ask him questions, which clarify the thing that the no water change The no filtration is really not the real truth. And I would like, I mean, it would be nice if people, again, everybody's goals, everybody's reasons for joining YouTube is different. There are other people who say, why don't you go to Rumble? You can monetize a lot quicker. Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that if YouTube decides to give me $50, $100 eventually a month, it will help me with fish food. It will help me with some of the fish needs. So I don't want to tell you I won't take it. I certainly will, because YouTube exists based on videos that content creators make. They advertise there, they make their money. So if we don't get whatever little portion belongs to YouTube, then will belongs to us, then YouTube will certainly keep those profits. So if anything comes my way, I will certainly do it. I will not push to do other thing, which my wife a lot of the times tells me, why don't you do merchandise? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you go on TikTok? Because you can get monetized. I said, listen, I have very limited time. I have a busy life work-wise. I have family. And to me, again, like I said, maybe I'm naive. Maybe I am a purist. Maybe I do really want to teach. It was to a point now where I've been kind of down. Again, nothing bad necessarily has been said about me, because I've been neutral on either extreme. But it was kind of depressing in a way, because people are projecting one thing and behind doors do something different. But they want people to believe that this is what they do. No filtration. And where does it come from? I've heard it from some channels. They don't do filtration. They have many tanks, like they all green, they are this, they're that. I don't do filtration. Listen how quiet the room is. I have no pumps running, and that's fine. That works for them. They have different reasons for keeping multiple tanks. They either breeders or they do something else, and that works for you, and that is fine. I don't want to change anybody's mind. I don't want you to believe that this system or that system or that method is the best way. But if you have an explanation why fish survive, fish are very adaptable to extreme conditions. If they can adapt to something, they're going to adapt to the other. And that's a great thing. Us humans, we're adaptable. If you and I, we go to the Himalayas, I am sure that we're going to have problem with altitude illness, right? But the people there, they have adapted to those low oxygen conditions. Eventually, if we live there, eventually we will adapt. Our body will adapt slowly. But it's a thing that happens. In our lifetime, evolution has happened to some species where they have adapted. We have cave fishes that don't have eyes because they've adapted to living in dark conditions. They don't need the eyes. So we know that evolution happens. We know that organisms are adaptable. So can they live in water that has been sitting for a while? Certainly they can. The dirted community has proven that they don't die, but again, they can adapt. And that's maybe a good explanation why they survive for such a long time. Again, to each his own. And as I said, I was, for a minute yesterday, I was thinking, I really fell down, because people, like I said, they want to project one image, they want to say some things, and then it's something different. Again, whatever drives them to do YouTube. In my case, it was really the desire to share information. There are some people who call me regularly or text me. I met them to YouTube. I felt comfortable giving them my phone number because they had legitimate questions and they really had the interest to learn. And they believed that the information that I was providing them was reasonable information. They called me back and they said, listen, whatever you told me worked great. My fish are doing fine. They improved. They didn't die, whatever the situation was. And I have done that other times where I provide people my email and give them my number, and then we communicate back and forth. For those people, I don't mind staying in YouTube. I was bothered, to be honest. I was bothered because I cannot convince anybody. If you're on a political side, or if you're on the other political side, whatever I said is not going to change your mind to do things. You remain with your current practices and whatever you believe in, whether it's a politics, whether it's a religion. So those are the two things I don't like to discuss. Maybe how you do fish keeping, maybe that's the third thing I should stay away from, because maybe that was my error in judgment, trying to have a reasonable conversation, about different practices in the hobby. Certainly didn't go that way, but I think today has been kind of a mental hard day. My wife says, listen, stuff is going to be said on YouTube, and I've been lucky so far. I have not had any real trolls. I have not, I've been lucky, and I cannot really complain about having really thing. But I was honestly, I was disappointed by the fact that you're going to project one image, and what you do in practice is different than what you're trying to get people to believe. And I don't hate Father Fish for what he does. He has proven his method. It works for him. It works for his 270 something thousand followers that I have. I just barely have a little bit over 1,000. I've been a year in YouTube, but not new to fish keeping. But I thank you for listening, and that was the I don't want to say my final word on the topic, because it will be discussed, but you can have real discussion in a sensible way and really raise things. Why this happened, why it happens here and why not there. One of the things that also Father Fish was, if you do massive water changes, again 80%, your fish are gonna die. Mine don't die. They die for other reasons, but not during water changes. So again, that's you could debunk that theory right away, right? But again, other people will say fish are gonna die in a dirted tank that has not had water changes for a year. You guys in the dirted tank community have proven that every day that that's not necessarily the truth. So you cannot make absolutes and extreme comments. And if you say something in YouTube, you have to be able to back it up and be honest. This is what I feel. Again, maybe I am stupid, maybe I am naive, but obviously, if you're making sensational thumbnails and one video makes you $12,000, as they said that Joey did, which he stated, Joey from the King of DIY. Again, that's beautiful for them. I'm not going to tell you that if you hands me a check, I'm going to say, no, take it back, because it does take time to make videos. It does take time to edit. It takes time to do stuff. So this is your time, because I could stay at work and work a few extra hours and not spend hours trying to put a video together, edit it, and so on. So anyway, thank you again. I hope this is a wonderful year for you and your family, and thank you so much.